Queen Latifah gets brutally murdered by a bunch of jellyfish, and no one seems to make that big of a deal about it. In Sphere, this is a 1998 film directed by Bary Levinson, starring Dustin Hoffman, Sharon Stone, and Samuel L. motherfucking Jackson. This is today's review, and this is an on-demand review. This request comes from Melanie Bernier. Thank you very much for your recommendation. So let's talk about Sphere. This movie I have seen so many times. I've seen this movie over and over and over and over again. And let me talk about that for a little bit. I know I have a few, younger viewers, I guess, who maybe don't quite know how it was back in the day, back in the faraway '90s, how kind of on-demand viewing quite worked. Like, so today you can go up to Netflix or even your cable provider or streaming sites and think of a movie, you got it. But back in the day, of course, before movies hit the main cable networks for like movie networks, things like that, and at the same time they would come to video, there was also on-demand viewing where basically you'd have a selection channel, and you'd actually call your local cable provider and be like, I want to watch Sphere, and then they'd say, okay, pay, here's your credit card over the phone, or put it to your account, what have you, and basically they'd unlock the portion of the channel where it was playing, and it'd say, okay, tune in at so-and-so time, and you can watch the movie. So, essentially, these were all these channels that were blocked out unless you paid for it, and the movies would just run a series of times throughout the day on a particular channel that would be unlocked or locked, depending on, if you pay for it or not. But, piracy, what it is, there's always a way around it, always a way to get movies for free. So, what a lot of people are figuring out, you get this box or a cable hookup where it could unlock those channels. So basically, you could just have this open channel where this movie is playing, 5, 6, 7 times a day and go nuts. So that's basically the late 90s to me, where I watched all these movies. And Sphere was one of those movies. So I've seen this movie more times than I even care to remember. But the thing was, I was pretty young when I watched it, so it was more of a memory by that point. So I remember liking it a fair amount, but probably I hadn't seen it since I was, like 10 years old. So I recently purchased the DVD here, and it's one of those snap cases things, and whatever, it's okay. But watched it again recently, had some thoughts on it. It's an interesting premise for a movie, and like one thing to keep in mind, obviously this is 1998, so we have this movie that, for one thing, based on a Michael Crichton novel, and Michael Crichton, the hugest name you could think of when it comes, like, as big as like Tom Clancy, Stephen King. If you have a movie with that name brand on it, it's going to be a hit, because of course Jurassic Park was the hugest hit of like all time at that point. So that's a very appealing name to have on it. A huge director like Bary Levinson, Oscar-winning director, Oscar-winning actor in Dustin Hoffman, one of the greatest actors of all time. A very popular actress in Sharon Stone, and Samuel L. Jackson, of course, and sort of an up-and-comer in Liev Schreiber, who's in the movie, and he's great in the movie, actually. And somewhere in between is Peter Coyote, from E.T., so he can't seem to get away from those aliens. But anyway, you think, okay, it's this huge movie. And an interesting premise to it. Actually, 2 portions to the premise that I think is pretty interesting. One is that, in thinking about us as human beings and extraterrestrial life and where we can find it, can we necessarily find it in space, or has extraterrestrial life, alien life, been under our noses this whole time in the ocean, in the deep? There's like, what is the percent of ocean that's actually been explored? Like 1%? It's got to be down there somewhere. Something somewhere is down there that could be of interest. So that's a good premise, I think, that alien life, not so much, playing by the rules of our space-time continuum, but somewhere in between geographically. There's an alien ship or alien piece of hardware, technology, this sphere, this big golden glowing thing that's down there in this craft. So I think that's an interesting premise, that it's a science fiction movie about alien encounters, but it's not about flying saucers or space exploration. It's about in the ocean, which, I mean, you could argue The Abyss beat it to the punch. And I'll say The Abyss is like 10 times, 20 times better movie than this, but, whatever. But the second interesting aspect to it is, okay, so you got to figure the government at some point kind of realize, well, maybe sometime in our lifetimes there's going to be a potential that alien species, extraterrestrials, people not of this earth, beings not of this earth, may visit us. So who are the best ambassadors to this? Certainly not, military who's going to scare them off or something like that. So they commissioned Dustin Hoffman's character, who's a psychologist, to kind of create a game plan for that, which he wrote. He admits, pretty early in the movie, he's like, "Oh, I just did it for money. It was all bullshit, whatever." But we have, certain, minds with special skills. We have the psychologist. We have a marine biologist in Sharon Stone, a mathematician in Samuel Jackson, astrophysicist in Liev Schreiber, all with these unique insights to hopefully best communicate with alien species, because it would be such a terrifying experience for any kind of normal person. We need these special scientists, these specialists in their fields, to do the best job possible. So he wrote the commission years and years ago. Who people used to be his friends in this group, and Sharon Stone was his past lover too. Then all of a sudden, when this bullshit kind of game plan essay that he wrote up happens to actually need use, it's like, we got all these characters in together. So I think that's an interesting kind of way to get these characters together. The movie itself, I mean, watching it again now that I'm a little bit older, there's definitely some silly things about it. Technical jargon here and there, stuff that may or may not be true. Like, if, let's say, for example, this movie was released today, completely as is, this would be the kind of movie that, like, Neil deGrasse Tyson would get on Twitter about and totally obliterate and make fun of. So there's that. And it has, kind of echoes of other sci-fi movies. Like, most notably, there's definitely very alien-esque scenes to it where, they're in their gear with, like, the flashlights and, it's them approaching that sphere thing. Very reminiscent of Alien, how the team is seeing the alien jockey, the space jockey. So it's very reminiscent of that. But there are some interesting things to it. I for one kind of find it almost like a guilty pleasure kind of movie, almost like unintentionally comedic. Like when they finally do. Possibly, I don't know if I want to spoil it, but they possibly encounter an alien being who communicates to them via their computer system, just via text. Like, it transmits a code, and they interpret it using, English language, English letters. They talk to an alien being named Jerry. And, like, some of the funniest parts of the movie is just, like, Dustin Hoffman arguing with Jerry, arguing to a computer screen, like, no, Jerry, we don't want to do that. Definitely don't want to do that. Definitely don't. No, definitely. Jerry. We need some alone time, Jerry. I know. I'm very excited to talk to you, Jerry. Definitely excited. Anyway, it's just very funny. And of course, there's a scene where it's this underground facility. Peter Coyote or Coyote. He's kind of the military and the bucks behind it. He has control over this whole thing, and there are other people who work in this aquatic station. One of them is Queen Latifah, and when strange things start happening, she's like out in the water, and then she starts getting attacked by jellyfish, and she's literally she's narrating her whole experience, like, oh, these jellyfish are starting to get a little aggressive. They're hurting me. Guys, I'm being eaten alive by jellyfish. And it's like, whatever, okay. Then, Samuel Jackson, he's having some kind of troubles too. He's kind of a wild. Well, they're all wild cards, but he seems a little pessimistic. He thinks that they're all going to die down there. That's what he kind of thinks. And he's been sleeping a lot, reading a lot, isolated a lot. Then he brings him into, the breakfast table, and Dustin Hoffman comes to him, like, Queen Latifah, she just died. He's like, oh, that's too bad. And he's like eating his breakfast, like, I love eggs. Eggs are really good. That's the double truth, Ruth. And he's completely unfazed by this lady who just died. And so Dustin Hoffman, all of a sudden, he's like, "Oh, do you like the secret ingredient there? It's calamari." And then all of a sudden, he's like, "Oh, calamari!" Because he has a fear of squids. So that's when we learn about him. We learn about this character, how he read 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea as a kid, and he couldn't get past the section of the novel with the squid in it. So that's his fear. So I'll say, without giving away too many spoilers, in a lot of ways, these characters' fears very much come into play. And it reaches a point where the characters are very untrusting of each other. There's a lot of paranoia. So it really works in this confined location. Like, it's a great set design piece that we see here. This space station, of course, when certain scenes arise and there's things that happen where they're in trouble and there's leaks and stuff. It all looks really cool. It does have a lot of tense and very cool scenes in the movie, and it's a very claustrophobic kind of feel to it, and very paranoid kind of feel to it. So I think it's best in those moments. Not so much that we're supposed to take all this science stuff seriously, not so much that where the movie ultimately arrives, that we're supposed to feel any kind of closure on it. I do feel the ending's kind of a cop-out a little bit, but I won't get into that. So this will be a spoiler-free review. But ultimately, I think the performances are good. Again, this was one of the first movies. This and Scream 2 were kind of the first times I noticed Liev Schreiber, who's a great actor, I think. And of course, Dustin Hoffman, he's the man. He's the greatest of all time. So I did hear that there were some production problems and that it wasn't quite the movie that they had envisioned it to be. So take that however you want. But as is, I think it's a sort of a silly movie. It is, but it is entertaining, and I would consider it a guilty pleasure. And it's kind of a movie where, yeah, there are quite a few, I would say, unintentionally funny scenes in it. But when you actually start to take it seriously, the scenes that you can take seriously, I think they work really well. And I think there is good tension among the cast, specifically between Sharon Stone and Dustin Hoffman, who have that history, who have this untrust of each other. So I think it works well. So sometimes movies just don't quite work out. So this isn't like the hugest, greatest classic of all time, but it's a nice 90s big production that has some fun to it. And it's cool if you like underwater movies, underwater exploration, and of course alien exploration. So that kind of tickles all my interests there. So I enjoy the movie, maybe a little bit biasly. But having said all that, The Abyss, check that movie out. If you're on the shelf or looking at Netflix or whatever, you have a choice between The Abyss and you have a choice between Sphere. Choose The Abyss. That's pretty much it. So that's my review of Sphere. Thank you very much, Melanie Bernier, for your recommendation. It was great watching this fun movie again. If you have a recommendation for me to review, please comment below. Tell me what to review. I'm taking your requests. This was an on-demand review, so I hope to do more of these on and on and on. So that's it. So be sure to comment, rate, subscribe, all that good stuff. Visit Derek237.com. And until next time, I'll see you later.